In Magic the Gathering, tokens are cards that aren't cards.
What?
Since the game's earliest days, there have been effects that allow you to create permanents that don't take up a physical slot in your deck. Tokens can be just about anything, and can be represented by just about anything. And nowadays, they're in every set in the game. There's a litany of effects that create tokens. Most frequently, simple 1/1 creatures or treasures, but some effects go a bit further. Some cards create legendary tokens, which represent unique, powerful characters in-game. But really, how impressive are these legendary tokens? Remember that when it comes to tokens, the legendary type is more of a drawback than anything. Most players who play tokens want to generate as many as possible after all. Only being able to have one copy of a token should mean that that one copy provides some serious value on its own. In this video, I'm going to be examining every legendary creature token printed and rank them based on how easy they are to create and how much value they add to the game. Keep in mind that I will only be ranking these tokens in relationship to one another and won't be comparing them to normal cards. And if this is the kind of content you enjoy, then why not leave a like and hit that subscribe button. This channel's all about TCGs, so expect more random videos like this in the future. Now with that said, let's begin with Ashaya, the Awoken World. Representing a part of Zendkar's very essence, Ashaya is a mighty elemental that assists the planeswalker Nissa whenever she's on her home plane, and has proven to be a powerful ally time and time again. With that said, Ashaya the Awoken World is a fairly underwhelming token. It's just a 4/4 green elemental, and it's not exactly the easiest to create. You see, to get this bad boy out, first you need to play Nissa Vastwood Seer, then trigger her second ability by playing a land while controlling 7 or more, which flips her over into Nissa Sage Animist. This is a planeswalker that has 3 loyalty abilities, but the second one, which costs 2 loyalty, is what summons Ashaya. Now at the time, Flipwalkers were brand new, and their power level just really wasn't set in stone, but it was clear that Ashaya was not the best value. Spending 3 mana and then waiting potentially several turns just to flip into a Planeswalker, and then set that Planeswalker's loyalty to 1 just to summon a vanilla 4/4? Yeah, Ashaya is straight up a D tier, no question about it. Then there's Avacyn. Just Avacyn. Representing perhaps the most powerful angel ever seen in Magic's story, this token is a stand-in for the Guardian of Innistrad and the Keeper of the Hellvault. Created by the planeswalker Sorin, Avacyn would keep the balance of her world by destroying any demon she could, and imprisoning those she couldn't. This token is created by Chapter 3 of Battle at the Hellvault, a 6-mana white saga that first temporarily exiles 2 non-land, non-saga permanents owned by each player before being sacrificed to create Avacyn. And what do you get for paying 6 mana and waiting 2 turns? Well, honestly, Avacyn's pretty impressive. An 8/8 angel with flying, vigilance, and indestructible represents some serious board presence that dodges most blockers and avoids the most common type of creature removal in the game. Still, Avacyn isn't perfect. Battle at the Hellvault is a costly mono-white enchantment and has no built-in protection of its own, so opponents who don't want to deal with Avacyn have 2 whole turns to destroy it. She's very impressive, don't get me wrong, but she's easy to stop and has a high cost and a waiting period to bring out, which lands her in the B tier. The newest entry to this list is Bow, the legendary blue ox. Bow is created whenever Bonnie Paul Clearcutter enters play, and its power and toughness are equal to the number of lands you control. From both a mechanical and flavor perspective, Bow is a pretty good token. You don't have to jump through any hoops to pull him out, just cast Bonnie Paul, and he's got great synergy with the card that makes him, since Bonnie's effect allows you to draw a card, then put a land from your hand or Graveyard into play whenever you attack. Since Bonnie is a 5-drop creature in Simic colors, there's a decent chance of Bo having some pretty good power and toughness when he drops, and he only gets bigger as the game goes on. Sure, he's got no protection or fancy abilities, but he's easy to bring out, and you really don't need them. Bo goes in the A tier. Next up, we have the first token on our list that can be made by more than one card. Boo, the legendary Hamster token. This token is created by the ETB effects of both Minsk, Beloved Ranger, and Minsk and Boo, Timeless Heroes, a legendary creature and a Planeswalker respectively, with the Planeswalker version even making a new copy of Boo every upkeep. For those who don't know, Minsk and Boo are characters from the long-running Baldur's Gate series of video games, Minsk being a complete psychopath and Boo being his miniature giant space hamster companion. Yes, you heard me correctly. At first glance, a 1/1 with trample and haste doesn't really seem all that impressive, but just like with Bo, Boo has excellent play synergy with the cards that create him. Minsk, Beloved Ranger, has an effect that lets you pay any amount of mana to make a target creature you control have base power and toughness equal to what you paid, and gives that creature the giant type until the end of turn. Meanwhile, both of Minsk and Boo, Timeless Heroes' loyalty abilities work well with Boo. The first, a +1 ability, puts 3 +1/+1 counters on up to one creature with trample or haste. The second, costing 2 loyalty, sacrifices a creature you control to deal damage equal to that creature's power to any target. Then, if the sacrificed creature was a hamster, you draw that many cards as well. Just like with Bo, Boo is incredibly easy to get onto the field, not only being made by 2 cards, but with one of those cards even bringing him back every turn if he dies. Adding in the amazing synergy Boo has with the cards that make him, and we have our very first S-tier legendary creature token. Up next is Cherrel, and I'm not going to go into this guy's lore. Long story short, this is a demon prince that is trapped inside of a human and is just sort of forced to obey the orders of the definitely not insane Inquisitor Eisenhorn. Fittingly, Cherrel's token is created by Eisenhorn. When this 4-drop legendary creature is out, you may reveal the first card you draw each turn, and if you reveal an instant or sorcery, you create Cherrel, a 4/4 black demon that has flying. While there's plenty of ways to stack the top of your deck in Magic, Cherrel isn't exactly a guaranteed token since there's also a lot of ways for opponents to mess with your deck, and, more importantly, Eisenhorn can totally be killed before Cherrel gets to see the field. Even if it does hit, a 4/4 with flying really isn't worth the cost of 4 mana and at least 1 whole turn cycle. It's at least better than Ashaya, so Cherrel sits in the C tier. Our next entry is a double feature with Ragavan and First Mate Ragavan, both representing the same devious monkey in the lore. Ragavan is a 2/1 red monkey created, tapped, and attacking whenever Kari Zev, Skyship Raider, attacks, and is exiled at the end of combat. Kari Zev is a pretty decent card on her own already, being a 2-drop 1/3 with First Strike and Menace, so slapping an extra body down whenever she attacks is pretty good. Sure, Ragavan doesn't stick around, but he does keep coming back so long as Kari continues to attack, so it sits in the B tier. First Mate Ragavan, however, is a 2/1 red monkey pirate that's created by Baral and Kari Zev. Whenever you cast your first instant or sorcery each turn, this legendary creature lets you cast a cheaper spell of the same type from your hand for free, and if you don't, it puts Ragavan on the board and gives the guy haste. Honestly, I don't know what to say. For all intents and purposes, this is the exact same token as normal Ragavan, it just has the pirate creature type slapped on. It also has 0 synergy with the card that makes it, aside from being given haste, which is fine, I guess. Even worse is that most of the time, you'd rather just have a free spell. The fact that Baral and Kari Zev costs more and gives you more hoops to jump through to make Ragavan makes him a strictly worse version of his original, so he ends up in the C tier. Gwen Stefani is a legendary cat made by Drizzle Dum Dum, the worst character ever conceived for the D&D franchise. No, this is not up for debate. When Dizzy D enters the field, Guar is created as a 4/1 green cat with trample. From an objective standpoint, Gary Indiana is just a bad token, having only 1 toughness and no way to bring it back besides recasting Drizdong, and sure, it synergizes with Dripsy a bit, but I'm gonna go ahead and place Gwandolf all the way down in D tier. The D stands for, damn, I hate Drizzit so much. Carox Bladewing is one of those tokens that you forget even exists and represents one of the many regal members of the Bladewing line of dragons from Dominaria. When Varix Bladewing, a 4-drop legendary dragon, is cast, you can kick the spell for 3 more mana, and if you do, Carox is created on the ETB. Being brief, there are so many more things you could do for 7 mana instead of creating 2 flying 4/4s that even when Varix was brand new, the card saw pretty much no play, so Carox himself likely has never really hit the board. This dragon sits in the D tier. Our next token is Kami, a legendary black-green frog created by Tatsunari, Toad Rider. This mono-black legendary ninja's effect lets you create Kami whenever you cast an enchantment spell. Kami is a 3/3 frog with its own ability. Whenever you cast an enchantment spell, each opponent loses a life and you gain a life. Furthermore, Tatsunari's second effect lets you pay 2 mana to make it and 1 frog you control unblockable except by creatures with flying or reach. Now, as a 3/3, Kami isn't the most amazing creature, but his effect adds a lot of value to your board presence, and it's really easy to bring him back so long as Tatsunari sticks around. Add in the fact that it synergizes directly with Tatsunari's second effect, and Kami makes an excellent A-tier token. Ravage and Laserbeak are both legendary artifact robots created by Soundwave, Superior Captain, the transformed version of Soundwave Sonic Spy. You can transform Soundwave by dealing damage to an opponent with a token, which then lets you banish an instant or sorcery from the graveyard with a cost equal to the damage dealt, cast a copy, and then transform it. Or you could skip all that nonsense and just pay his more than meets the eye cost. Soundwave Superior Captain has 2 simple abilities. Whenever you cast a spell with odd mana value, he transforms back, but also creates Ravage, a legendary 3/3 black robot token with Menace and Death Touch. If you cast an even spell instead, you create Laserbeak, which is a 2/2 blue robot token with flying and hexproof. Assuming you first cast Soundwave already transformed, to get both of these tokens out involves first casting a spell, which transforms Soundwave, then swinging with a token and hoping it deals damage, so that you can cast a spell from the graveyard, transform Soundwave again, then cast another spell, just to get the second token out. For all that effort, what do you get? Honestly, both tokens are kind of okay, each having some form of evasion. Ravage has Menace and Death Touch, which means opponents are really unlikely to block him. Laserbeak, meanwhile, has Flying and Hexproof, meaning he's a bit harder to get rid of. Both are pretty good, but they're held back by Soundwave himself having such a convoluted way of creating them. If they were just a bit easier to make, they'd be A-tier tokens, but for now, these bad boys sit in the B tier. Next up, we get to the token that started it all. Merit Lage is an extremely powerful interdimensional eldritch abomination that currently lies dormant underneath Dominaria's Ronam Glacier. Merit Lage is the very first legendary creature token in the game's history, made way back in Cold Snap, and boy is she a doozy. Originally, she was made through the effect of Dark Depths, a legendary land that enters play with 10 ice counters on it. By paying 3 mana, you could remove an ice counter from the card and, once all 10 are gone, Dark Depths sacrifices itself and Merit Lage is unleashed. This is a black 2020 avatar with both flying and indestructible, and to this day has the highest default stats of any creature in the game. You'd think that the steep mana investment needed to bring her out would make her basically unplayable, and you'd be right. It really wasn't until other cards came along that made getting those counters off of Dark Depths much easier that Merit Lage started to see play, and nowadays she enjoys a niche but fun place in certain vintage decks. Much later in the Modern Horizons set, Merit Lage's Slumber was released, a 2-drop blue snow enchantment that scryed once whenever it or another snow permanent came into play, and at the beginning of your upkeep, if you controlled at least 10 snow permanents, it would sacrifice itself and bring out Merit Lage. Now, Merit Lage's Slumber seems like it might be better at making the token, but in the years since its release, Dark Depths has proven to have the easier time creating her. Having the benefit of 2 different cards to pull her out, as well as phenomenal stats and defenses, makes Merit Lage one of the most impressive tokens ever made in the game's history, and her spot in vintage decks is well deserved, earning her an easy S rank. The Mech Titan is another high-power token created through the effect of Mech Titan Core, an artifact vehicle that has Crew 2 for a 2/4, or by paying 5 mana and banishing the core alongside 4 other vehicles or artifact creatures, you create the Mech Titan, a legendary 10/10 construct artifact creature that is all colors, has flying, vigilance, trample, lifelink, and haste. This big boy is an absolute unit and stands out among the Kamigawa Neon Dynasty cards, which is strange because it has absolutely no lore that I'm aware of. Add on to its impressive stat line with the fact that if the Mech Titan leaves play, all cards banished to create it are returned to the field, and you have a very big token that is very difficult to get rid of for long. Even costing 5 mana and 5 permanents, the Mech Titan is an absolute menace and can be a serious problem for opponents, so it sits in the S tier with the best of them. Mowu is an adorable, or horrifying, hound token created by the planeswalker Jiang Yang Yu, specifically his -1 loyalty ability. Jiang is a 5-drop green planeswalker, and Mowu is his doggy companion that follows him everywhere, even across planes. Mowu is a green legendary hound with 3 power and toughness, and nothing else. Honestly, if that were it, this guy would be slapped right down to D tier, if for the cost and stats alone. Fortunately, this dog has a bit of synergy with Jiang, since both of his other loyalty abilities can directly support Mowu. The first is a +1 ability that gives a creature +2/+2 until the end of turn, and the other, a -5 ability, gives a creature trample and additional power equal to the number of lands you control, again until the end of turn. Now, while these abilities do help Mowu a bit, neither are really good enough to make him a good token, so this hound sits in the C tier. Coming straight out of the pages of Tolkien's Hobbit, Smow is the second token on our list to be created as the result of a saga, There and Back Again. This 5-drop red saga first makes it so that one creature can't block as long as There and Back Again is out, and also the ring tempts you. Its second chapter searches your library for a mountain and puts it into play, with the third chapter, at long last, creating Smaug. Smaug is a red legendary dragon with 6 power and toughness, as well as flying and haste, and when it dies, you get 14 treasure tokens, representing the 14 shares of the treasure split by Thorin's company. Just like Avacyn, Smaug is an extremely impressive token with a very good effect held back by the card used to create him. There and Back Again is a hefty investment with no protection, and Smaug specifically needs to die, not be exiled, to get the payoff of 14 mana. It really is a cool token, but just like Avacyn, it's really not worth the cost and weight, so he sits in the B tier. Did I say Merit Lage was the first legendary token? Well, that was my mistake. In actuality, Stang Twin was the first, but please forgive me for forgetting about him since he's so forgettable. Just like Boo and Merit Lage, Stang Twin has two different cards that can make him. The first being, well, Stang from all the way back in Legends. Stang is a 6-drop 3/4 human warrior that, when it comes into play, you get a Stang Twin who shares his stats. This would be a pretty great effect, especially by the standards of Legends cards, but there's a drawback. You see, Stang's effect makes it so that if either himself or the token leaves play, you lose both cards, making this token virtually unplayable. Fortunately, Stang Twin would get a bit of a buff with Stang Echo Warrior from the Dominaria United Commander set. This is a 4-drop 3/4, and whenever Stang attacks, you create the Stang Twin tapped and attacking. What's more, Stang Echo Warrior creates a copy of each aura and equipment attached to it and puts those copies on the Stang Twin, meaning this token got a serious upgrade with the new card. Sure, all tokens created by Echo Warrior are sacrificed at the end of the turn, but as long as Stang keeps attacking, the Stang Twin will continue to see action. If it weren't for this new card, Stang Twin would be flushed down to the D tier, but now he can rest up in A tier as a pretty solid token. Temt, Vizier of Naktamun, is really only in this video as a technicality. You see, back in the Amonkhet block, Wizards of the Coast was experimenting with a mechanic known as Embalm. By paying a cost and exiling cards with the mechanic from your graveyard, you created a token copy of it, except the token was a white zombie. Temt, Vizier of Naktamun, is a legendary creature from the Amonkhet set with the Embalm keyword, so naturally his Embalm token is legendary too. Temt himself costs only 2 mana, but his Embalm effect costs 5, and for that, you get a 2/2 zombie that gives a creature token, probably itself, +1/+1 and unblockable until the end of turn whenever you enter combat. It's honestly not that bad, and it's really more or less just a way to get a bit more use out of a normal creature. Temt goes on the B tier. Next up we have the Atropa, and I'm going to save everyone a bit of time by just going ahead and putting this guy in the D tier. What, you want an explanation? Okay, if you say so. You see, the Atropa has an extremely tedious creation process. First, you need one of the dozens of cards that ventures into the dungeon. Then you need to venture into a specific dungeon, the Tomb of Annihilation, at least 3 times. Keep in mind that this dungeon is one of the worst in terms of card advantage. So, if you get a creature that ventures into the dungeon 3 times, what do you get? The Atropa, a 4/4 Black God horror creature token with Death Touch and nothing else. Really, it's not the worst investment, and it's probably easier to create than Smow or Avacyn, but it's just not good. Dungeon delving was already one of the weaker mechanics designed by WotC, and having this guy be the payoff is just a disappointment. D tier. The Hollow Sentinel is a Phyrexian mockery of Karn created by none other than Venser, Corpse Puppet. This 2-drop 1/3 has lifelink and toxic 1, and whenever you proliferate, you get one of 2 effects. The second effect gives a target artifact creature lifelink and flying until the end of turn, but the first effect makes the Hollow Sentinel, a colorless Phyrexian Golem artifact token with 3 power and toughness. This is a weird one, because on one hand, while it's not impressive, it does get some benefit from Venser. On the other hand, Venser doesn't have a way to make the Hollow Sentinel on his own, relying on other cards, which is always not great, especially when the Sentinel itself has no special abilities. It's not really impressive. It's got cool art, but that's not worth much, so this bad boy sits in the D tier. Coming from the most recent in a long long line of scent-related commander products, Tiny is a green dog detective with 2 power and toughness as well as trample. This token is created through the ETB effect of Sophia, Dogged Detective, a 4-drop 3/4 who also synergizes well with Tiny through her other effects. The first lets you pay a mana and sacrifice an artifact to put a +1/+1 counter on each dog you control, and the second effect creates a food token and investigates whenever a dog you control deals combat damage to a player. Kind of odd that the dog is a detective, but he combos great with the card that makes him and is overall a good boy, so he gets an A-tier spot. Next we have Tuk Tuk the Returned, a colorless 5/5 Goblin Golem artifact creature that is created by the effect of Tuk Tuk the Explorer, a 3-drop legendary goblin with 1 power and toughness and haste. You see, when Tuk Tuk dies, Tuk Tuk the Returned is automatically created. Tuk Tuk is fine. He's not bad, but he's nothing to write home about. He's pretty easy to create too, since all you have to do is kill Tuk Tuk. But Tuk Tuk has no abilities and doesn't synergize with anything on his own, so he sits in the B tier. Right out of the hit Netflix show Stranger Things, our next token is the zombie god Vecna. This token is created through the effect of the Book of Vile Darkness, itself a legendary artifact that costs 3 mana and makes a zombie on your end step if you lost 2 life that turn. You can exile the Book of Vile Darkness as well as the Hand of Vecna and the Eye of Vecna to create Vecna, an 8/8 black zombie god with Indestructible. Indestructible on an 8/8 body makes for a pretty solid card, but sadly, Vecna needs 3 specific artifacts, costing 8 mana total, to be sacrificed in order to summon him. Once he gets out, he is a bit hard to get rid of, but he's got no recursion and no synergy, and, unlike Avacyn or Smow, all that investment doesn't even get you a creature with evasion. Vecna is C tier at best. And finally, we have 3 different tokens representing the same extremely long-lived dog, Voja. Voja is a simple 2/2 white-green wolf token created by the ETB of Tulsimir Wolfblood, a 6-drop 3/4 elf that also gives other green creatures +1/+1 and other white creatures +1/+1. So really, as long as Tulsimir is out, Voja is a vanilla 4/4 that essentially costs 6 mana. Yeah, I'm gonna be honest, this guy's a D tier. Voja, Friend to the Elves, is a 3/3 white-green wolf token, this time created by Tulsimir, Friend to Wolves. Tulsimir this time around is a 5-drop that also gains you 3 life whenever a wolf comes into play and has that wolf fight up to 1 creature. And while that is a little better than a generic 4/4, it's not better by much. So Voja, Friend to the Elves, sits in the C tier. And finally, we get to Voja Fen Stalker, a 5/5 white-green wolf with trample created by, once again, the ETB of a Tulsimir. This time Tulsimir Midnight's Light, another 5-drop elf, this time a scout with lifelink. This time around, Tulsimir's effect makes it so that when a wolf you control attacks, a target creature an opponent controls must block it. And since this Voja is a 5/5 with trample, that's honestly not the worst effect. Still, it's got no protection and no other abilities. It is a strict upgrade, but again, not by much. Voja Fen Stalker sits in the B tier. And that wraps up our list. Let me know what you think. Do you agree with my assessment, or do you think I'm a silly, stupid robot? Let me know in the comments section below. Don't forget to like, share the video, and subscribe for more updates. It's completely free to do these things, and it helps the channel grow. We've got a Discord server if you want to hang out, and if you want to support the channel, consider checking out Patreon. Thanks again for watching, and I'll see you next time. If you want to know why I didn't do Kaldra, Wizards never gave him a physical token, which is horseshit.